Your soulmate secretly wrote you a love letter. Read it before tomorrow, because their biggest confession is inside. My beloved child. Somewhere between everything your soulmate has been trying to say and everything they have been too afraid to admit, a letter was written with your name at the center of it. But here is what makes this different: they never planned for you to discover it this soon. They wrote it privately, stopped halfway through, returned to it later, and changed one particular sentence again and again because those words revealed far more than they were ready to explain. And now, for reasons even they did not expect, tomorrow has become important. Not because something terrible is coming, but because a decision they have delayed for far too long may finally be made. Don't skip. The first clue is hidden in what they refuse to erase. At the top of that letter, before any explanation, they wrote about the exact moment they realized their feelings for you were no longer something they could casually ignore. Yet strangely, that was not their biggest confession. What came next was harder for them to put into words. Your soulmate admitted that there were moments when they intentionally appeared distant, uncertain, or unusually quiet. Not because you meant less to them, but because you had begun to mean more than they knew how to handle. They questioned whether the connection they felt was real, whether you could possibly feel something similar, and whether speaking too soon might change everything between you. So they kept waiting for the perfect moment. But that moment never arrived. Instead, small memories kept returning to them. Something you once said, the way your presence changed the atmosphere around them, and one seemingly ordinary interaction they remembered long after it happened. That memory appears in the letter for a reason. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate finally connected that memory to a truth they had been avoiding, and once they understood it, they added a new paragraph to the letter that completely changed its meaning. And this is where tomorrow enters the story. Near the end of the letter, your soulmate wrote that they could no longer keep living inside unanswered questions. They had spent enough time wondering what might happen if they finally became completely honest with you. They were tired of rewriting conversations in their mind and imagining words they never actually said. So they made themselves a quiet promise. Before another day passed, they would decide whether to keep this letter hidden or finally allow the truth behind it to reach you. But just before finishing, they added one last sentence beneath everything else. It was shorter than the rest. No dramatic explanation. No complicated language. Just one confession that apparently took them longer to write than the entire letter itself. And when they finally wrote it, they did not cross it out. They underlined it. Because that sentence reveals not only how they truly feel about you, but what they have secretly been hoping could happen next, and the exact words behind that confession change everything you thought this letter was leading toward. That final underlined sentence was not simply, "I have feelings for you." Your soulmate had already admitted that much to themselves long before this letter existed. What made their hand hesitate was what came after those feelings. They wrote that whenever they imagined the future becoming quieter, simpler, and more meaningful, somehow you kept appearing inside that picture. Not as a temporary chapter. Not as someone they would eventually forget. You appeared as the person they still wanted beside them after the excitement faded and ordinary life began. But there was another detail they almost removed. Your soulmate confessed that they had secretly imagined telling you all of this before. They had even rehearsed the conversation in their mind, choosing where they would begin and what they would say if you became silent. Don't skip, because the letter reveals why they never followed through, and it has nothing to do with a lack of love. The truth is, your soulmate became afraid of one question they could never answer for themselves: what if I waited too long? That thought began following them everywhere. Every time they considered reaching out, another doubt appeared. Maybe your life had changed. Maybe your heart had moved in another direction. Maybe the silence between you had already said something neither of you intended it to say. And then something happened recently that made those questions impossible to ignore. Your soulmate heard your name unexpectedly during an ordinary conversation. Nobody knew what that name meant to them, so they had to sit there pretending it was nothing. But inside, everything shifted. One simple mention of you brought back every unfinished thought they had tried to bury. Later that same day, they opened the unfinished letter again. This time, instead of deleting words, they added something new, an admission that they had been waiting for reassurance when what they truly needed was courage. Stay till the end, because the next line explains why tomorrow suddenly became their private deadline. Your soulmate wrote that if they continued waiting for certainty, they might remain silent forever. There would always be another reason to hesitate, another possibility to overthink, another imagined outcome convincing them to wait one more day. So they chose tomorrow, not because tomorrow carries some mysterious power, but because they needed a real boundary between hiding and finally being honest. And then came the confession beneath the underlined sentence, almost like a secret hidden inside another secret. They admitted they were not only hoping you still cared. They were hoping there might still be a chance to begin again differently, with honesty instead of guessing, clarity instead of silence, and no more pretending that this connection had become meaningless. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is still one part of the letter you have not heard. At the very bottom, after your soulmate thought they were finished, they added a tiny note in the margin. It contains a specific promise about what they intend to do before tomorrow ends, and that promise reveals whether this letter was ever meant to remain secret at all. The tiny note in the margin changes the entire story, because your soulmate wrote it after they had already folded the letter away. Something made them open it one final time, take the pen back into their hand, and add words they apparently could not leave unsaid: if I get one real chance, I will stop hiding what this means to me. That was the promise. But underneath it, they added something even more revealing. They admitted that they had spent so much time trying to protect themselves from disappointment that they accidentally created the very distance they never wanted between you. Suddenly, all those quiet moments looked different to them. The conversations they almost started. The messages they considered sending. The times they wanted to explain themselves but decided to wait. Don't skip. Because your soulmate finally understands that silence did not make their feelings disappear, it only made the truth harder to carry. And now they are preparing to do something they once believed they would never have the courage to do. But before making that decision, your soulmate returned to one particular memory of you. It was not some enormous dramatic moment. That is exactly why it mattered. You had done something small, something you may not even remember, and your soulmate wrote that it revealed a side of you they could never forget. In that moment, they saw kindness without performance. They saw someone who did not need attention to make another person feel understood. And according to the letter, that was when their feelings changed from simple attraction into something deeper. They did not recognize it immediately. Only later, when they compared everyone else they met to the peace they remembered feeling around you, did the truth become impossible to dismiss. Stay till the end, because this is where the letter becomes surprisingly specific. Your soulmate admits they have been carrying one question about you for a long time, and tomorrow they may finally stop wondering and seek the answer for themselves. That question is not whether you are perfect. Your soulmate already knows you are human, just as they are. What they desperately want to know is whether there is still room for an honest conversation between you, one without old assumptions, rehearsed answers, or hidden feelings. And that explains why the letter exists. It was never merely a romantic confession. It became a rehearsal for truth. Every page helped your soulmate say privately what they had been unable to say openly. But something huge is waiting for you, because they wrote one final condition for themselves before putting the letter away. If tomorrow arrives and they still feel exactly what they felt while writing these words, they will take that as their answer. They will stop pretending the connection belongs only in memory. And according to the final unfinished line, they already know the first thing they want to tell you when that moment comes. The strange part? They stopped writing halfway through that sentence, as though the rest was never meant to be read on paper, but spoken directly to you. That unfinished sentence has been sitting in your soulmate's mind ever since they put the pen down, and there is a reason they could not complete it. The words began simply. If you still have even a little space in your heart for me, I want to, and then nothing. No crossed-out ending. No replacement sentence. Just an empty space where the most important words should have been. Your soulmate realized that finishing it on paper would make the decision feel safe again, hidden between pages where nothing could truly change. But saying it to you would require something different. Courage. Honesty. A willingness to hear your answer instead of imagining it. Don't skip, because this is where their secret letter stops being about the past. Your soulmate has started thinking about what happens after you finally know the truth, and one possibility keeps returning to them more strongly than all the others. They do not imagine some perfect movie scene. What they want is surprisingly simple. One honest conversation where neither of you has to guess anymore. Your soulmate wrote that they would rather know the truth than spend another season wondering what could have happened. And there is another confession buried between those lines. They have been noticing reminders of you in ordinary places, a familiar phrase, a shared kind of humor, even moments when they instinctively think, I wish I could tell them about this. Those tiny reminders made them understand something they had resisted for a long time. Missing you was not only about remembering what happened before. It was about realizing how naturally they still wanted to include you in what happened next. Stay till the end, because the letter reveals the exact fear that nearly convinced them to destroy every page, and what stopped them at the last second. Your soulmate actually held the letter and considered getting rid of it, believing that perhaps silence would be easier than vulnerability. But then they reread the first line they had written about you, followed by the underlined confession, and something changed. They realized destroying the pages would not destroy what they felt. It would only remove the evidence that, for once, they had been completely truthful with themselves. So they kept it. And beside the unfinished sentence, they added two small words, say it. Something huge is waiting for you, because those words were not written as a message to you. They were written as an instruction to themselves. Tomorrow is approaching, and your soulmate has apparently decided that if they still cannot finish that sentence on paper, they will try to finish it another way. But there is one more hidden detail inside the letter, a detail about why they chose you specifically, when they could have walked away and started over. And once you hear what they wrote about that, the entire meaning of their confession becomes even deeper. The reason they chose you was hidden in a sentence that almost looked unimportant, but it may be the most revealing line in the entire letter. Your soulmate wrote that around you, they never felt the same need to become someone more impressive, more polished, or more carefully controlled. Somehow, you made ordinary moments feel meaningful simply because they could be themselves. And that frightened them more than they expected. Real connection meant there was something real to lose. So instead of moving closer, they sometimes stepped back and convinced themselves they needed more time. But now they understand what they were actually doing, protecting themselves from a possibility they secretly wanted. Don't skip. Because immediately after admitting this, your soulmate wrote about one moment when they almost told you everything, and what interrupted that moment changed the way they approached you afterward. They had apparently been ready to speak. They had rehearsed the first few words, imagined your reaction, and promised themselves they would not retreat again. Then they noticed something about you that made them hesitate. You seemed distracted, perhaps carrying thoughts of your own, and your soulmate suddenly wondered whether bringing their feelings into that moment would place pressure on you. So they stayed quiet. At first, they believed they had made the respectful choice. But as time passed, that silence became harder to undo. One missed opportunity became another. Then another. Eventually, your soulmate realized you might have interpreted their hesitation completely differently. Stay till the end, because this realization explains another strange line in the letter, maybe they never knew. Your soulmate is beginning to consider something they had never seriously considered before, that you may have spent all this time without understanding how important you truly were to them. And that possibility seems to be what finally changed their decision about tomorrow. Your soulmate no longer wants you to judge the connection only by everything they failed to say. They want their actions to become clearer than their hesitation. Near the bottom of the letter, they wrote 3 things they wanted to leave behind: guessing, delaying, and pretending. Then they wrote one thing they wanted to choose instead: honesty. Something huge is waiting for you, because after writing that word, they added a sentence that reveals their next move more clearly than anything before it: I don't need the perfect moment anymore. I only need one truthful one. And beneath that, there is a new line that was apparently added later, written more firmly than everything surrounding it. Your soulmate has decided exactly how they want that truthful moment to begin. But the first words they plan to say are not, I love you. They are something far more personal, something connected to the one misunderstanding they desperately want to correct before they reveal the rest. The first words your soulmate wants to say are surprisingly simple: you misunderstood my silence. That sentence appears near the bottom of the letter, almost like they finally discovered the beginning they had been searching for. They know there were moments when their distance could have looked like indifference. Moments when you might have wondered whether the connection mattered only to you. But according to what they wrote, the opposite was happening inside them. The more meaningful you became, the more carefully they tried to control what they revealed. They thought waiting would give them clarity. Instead, it created confusion. And now there is one misunderstanding they desperately want to correct: they never became quiet because you stopped mattering. They became quiet because admitting exactly how much you mattered would have forced them to make a choice they were not yet prepared to make. Don't skip. Because that choice is finally written down, and your soulmate is no longer describing what they might do someday. They wrote that tomorrow cannot become another excuse. No more waiting for perfect timing. No more expecting some magical sign that removes every uncertainty. Your soulmate finally understands that meaningful relationships do not begin with guarantees. Sometimes they begin with two people being brave enough to tell each other the truth. So they made a decision. They want to give you the opportunity they should have given you much earlier, the opportunity to hear what they actually feel and decide for yourself what it means. But then the letter becomes unexpectedly emotional. Your soulmate admits they are prepared for the possibility that your answer may not match the one they secretly hoped for. And strangely, accepting that possibility made them feel stronger, not weaker. Stay till the end, because they realized something important: being honest with you is no longer about controlling the outcome. It is about finally respecting the connection enough to stop hiding behind assumptions. Then comes the detail that changes the meaning of the entire letter. Your soulmate wrote that if they get the chance to speak with you, they do not intend to hand you pages filled with explanations and expect you to understand everything immediately. Instead, they want to begin with one question: can we talk honestly about what happened between us? Something huge is waiting for you, because after writing that question, they finally completed the unfinished sentence from earlier. Remember those words. If you still have even a little space in your heart for me, I want to. The ending is finally there. Your soulmate wrote, find out what we could become if neither of us hides anymore. But even that is not the biggest confession. On the back of the final page, where they thought nobody would ever look, they wrote one last private truth about the future they secretly pictured with you. And unlike everything else in the letter, those words were written without hesitation. Those words on the back of the final page were different because your soulmate was no longer explaining the past, they were finally admitting what they wanted from the future. They wrote, I don't want another version of my life where I keep wondering what we could have been. No hesitation. No correction marks. And directly beneath that sentence, they described something unexpectedly ordinary. Talking with you at the end of a long day, laughing about things nobody else would understand, being present through imperfect moments, and building trust slowly instead of chasing some flawless fantasy. That is what surprised them most. Their biggest dream about you was not dramatic. It was real. Don't skip, because this realization forced your soulmate to confront something they had avoided throughout the entire letter. If they genuinely wanted that future, they could no longer expect you to somehow discover feelings they had never clearly expressed. So your soulmate made another promise to themselves. If they finally speak, they will not hide behind confusing hints. They will not expect you to read between the lines or solve the mystery for them. They want to tell you clearly that you became important in a way they never planned, and that distance never erased what they felt. But there is one part they are still nervous about, the moment after those words leave their mouth. Your response. Your silence. Your questions. They have imagined every possibility, yet one particular possibility. Those 5 words beside the tiny star were, because you are worth knowing. And your soulmate did not mean knowing casually. They meant knowing beyond assumptions, beyond unfinished conversations, beyond everything both of you may have misunderstood. That sentence changed something inside them. For so long, they had focused on whether revealing their feelings would make them vulnerable. Now they were asking a completely different question. What if staying silent meant never discovering the person you had become? Your soulmate realized they did not want to keep loving an idea of you from a distance. They wanted to understand the real you, your thoughts, your hopes, the things that make you laugh unexpectedly, even the ways you may have changed while they were hesitating. Don't skip. Because immediately beneath those 5 words, your soulmate admitted something they had never written anywhere else. They are no longer afraid that knowing you better might change their feelings. They are afraid they may have waited so long that you stopped expecting them to try. That fear could have sent them backward again, but this time it did something completely different. Your soulmate wrote that they cannot control what you feel today, and they cannot rewrite the moments when courage failed them. What they can control is whether they finally show up honestly. So they began imagining that first conversation, not rehearsing your response, but deciding what truth they owed you. They want to acknowledge the confusion. They want to explain the silence without making excuses for it. Most importantly, they want to listen. Stay till the end, because that word, listen, appears twice in the final section of the letter. Your soulmate understands that their confession cannot be only about what they need to say. They want to know what this experience looked like from your side. What did you notice? What did you misunderstand? What did you wish they had said sooner? And then they wrote a sentence that shows how much their thinking has changed. Whatever happens next should belong to both of us, not just the story I created inside my head. But there is still one secret left behind those pages. After finishing the letter, your soulmate apparently read everything from beginning to end and noticed that nearly every paragraph was about fear, timing, memories, and possibility. Yet one truth remained strangely absent. So at the very bottom, beneath everything else, they finally wrote it without explanation. I kept choosing you in my mind, even when I was pretending I had moved on. Something huge is waiting for you, because that confession answers why nobody else ever completely replaced the space you occupied in their thoughts. But it also creates a much bigger question. If your soulmate has finally admitted that their feelings survived all this silence, what exactly are they prepared to do about it now? There is one final decision written inside the folded edge of the letter, almost hidden from view. And it reveals whether tomorrow is simply another date on the calendar or the moment your soulmate finally stops writing about you and starts speaking to you. Inside that folded edge, your soulmate left themselves one final instruction: do something real. Those 3 words may be more important than every beautiful sentence that came before them, because your soulmate finally recognized the difference between feeling something and acting honestly about it. A letter could hold their emotions forever, but it could not answer the questions between you. It could not tell them what you feel now. It could not repair misunderstandings or create a new beginning. So they decided tomorrow would become the point where imagination ends and reality gets a chance. Don't skip. There is a surprising detail here. your soulmate originally planned to reveal everything at once, but after rereading the letter, they changed their mind. They realized dropping years of hidden emotion into one overwhelming moment would not be fair to either of you. Instead, they decided their first step should be smaller, calmer, and more meaningful, opening a door rather than demanding an answer. That decision changed the tone of the final lines completely. Your soulmate stopped writing like someone preparing a dramatic confession and started writing like someone finally ready for an honest conversation. They want to approach you without pretending they already know what you will say. They want to ask how you have been, listen carefully, and allow the conversation to become real before revealing everything they have carried. But one question still scares them: will you recognize what this moment means? Stay till the end, because they left themselves a reminder about that too. They wrote, "Don't expect them to understand what you never explained." That sentence forced your soulmate to accept responsibility for their silence. If you ever doubted their feelings, they now understand why. If you eventually stopped waiting for clarity, they understand that too. And instead of allowing that realization to discourage them, it made their next decision even stronger. Your soulmate then returned to the underlined confession from the beginning and added something beside it: tell them the truth, then let them choose. Something huge is waiting for you, because those words reveal a completely different kind of courage. They are not preparing to pressure you into a particular ending. They are preparing to finally give you the information you were missing and respect whatever happens afterward. Yet just when the letter seems complete, there is another line squeezed beneath the final fold, almost as though your soulmate remembered one last thing after deciding everything else. It begins, "Before I speak to them, I need them to know," and then continues with a confession even more personal than the ones before it. It explains what your soulmate believes you unknowingly changed inside them, why they still remember you after all this time, and why tomorrow matters enough that they are finally willing to stop hiding behind the letter. Before your soulmate could finish that final thought, they stopped and reread everything they had written about you. Then the words finally came: "They made me want to become more honest with myself." That was the change they believe you unknowingly created. Knowing you forced them to notice how often they avoided difficult feelings by pretending those feelings were temporary. With you, that strategy stopped working. Every attempt to dismiss the connection eventually brought them back to the same truth: something about you had reached a part of them that could not be convinced to forget. Don't skip. Because they wrote that this was never about you being perfect or somehow completing their life. It was about what your presence revealed. Around you, they noticed what genuine understanding felt like. After you, they began recognizing the difference between connections that simply occupied their time and one that made them want to become more open, thoughtful, and courageous. And suddenly, the reason they kept remembering you became impossible to deny. That realization also explains why tomorrow matters so much. Your soulmate is not treating it as some magical deadline. They chose it because they finally became tired of postponing honesty. Every delay had allowed another imaginary conversation to replace the real one. So they wrote themselves a rule: when tomorrow comes, do not rehearse another perfect speech. Begin with something true. Stay till the end, because the exact sentence they chose is hidden near the bottom of the page, and it is far simpler than everything they practiced before. They plan to begin with, "There's something I should have told you a long time ago." From there, they want to let the conversation breathe. No performance. No pretending they know your feelings. Just the truth about why they became distant, what they misunderstood, and why you continued appearing in their thoughts long after they expected those feelings to fade. But there is still one thing they have not decided, whether the letter itself should ever reach your hands. And that decision may be the most emotional one yet. Part of your soulmate wants you to read every page, because the letter contains thoughts they may struggle to express aloud. Another part wants to keep it private, because they believe you deserve their real voice instead of words written safely in solitude. Something huge is waiting for you. In the final margin, they created two choices for themselves: give them the letter, and tell them face to face. For a while, neither choice was marked. Then, sometime later, your soulmate returned and placed a small line beside one of them. But before choosing completely, they added a condition underneath. A condition connected directly to how your first honest conversation unfolds. If that one moment happens between you, they already know exactly what they will do with the secret letter. And hidden beneath that condition is the confession they have protected most carefully of all, what they truly hope your relationship could become after tomorrow. The condition beneath those two choices was unexpectedly simple: if they give me space to be honest, tell them everything. Your soulmate was not waiting for some perfect response from you. They were waiting for one small sign that an honest conversation was welcome. A question. A moment of patience. Even a quiet willingness to hear what they had carried for so long. If that happens, they have decided the letter will no longer remain hidden. But here is the surprising part: they may not hand it to you immediately. Your soulmate wrote that they want to speak first, because they need you to hear the truth without polished sentences protecting them. Only afterward, if the moment feels right, will they reveal that these pages existed long before the conversation ever began. Don't skip. Because beside that condition, your soulmate wrote what they secretly hope happens after you discover the letter, and it is not the dramatic ending you might expect. What they hope for is a beginning. Your soulmate wrote that they do not want one confession to magically solve every unanswered question between you. They want something slower and more genuine: another conversation after the first one, then another, until neither of you has to wonder what the other person means. They imagine rebuilding trust where uncertainty once lived and learning who you both are now instead of remaining trapped inside old memories. Stay till the end, because one sentence reveals just how deeply they have thought about this possibility: I don't want to return to what we almost had. I want to discover what we could build now. That distinction matters. Your soulmate is not asking the past to repeat itself. They are hoping the two of you could create something more mature, more open, and more intentional than anything that existed before. Yet while writing those words, they noticed one final fear hiding beneath all their courage, a fear that you might hear their confession and ask the one question they still struggle to answer. That question is, why did you wait so long? Your soulmate wrote several answers, crossed them out, and eventually admitted that none of them were good enough. Timing, uncertainty, fear, confusion, every explanation sounded smaller once they imagined looking at you and saying it aloud. So they settled on the only answer that felt completely true: I was afraid to discover how much this could matter. Something huge is waiting for you, because after writing that sentence, they finally revealed what they hope your relationship could become after tomorrow. Not an instant promise. Not a perfect ending. A real chance. A chance to know you without hiding, to let you know them without guessing, and to discover whether everything that survived the silence was pointing towards something worth choosing together. But there is still one final page you have not heard. Your soulmate added it after believing the letter was completely finished, and unlike every other page, it is addressed directly to you. The opening sentence contains your soulmate's most personal confession yet. And once those words are revealed, you will understand what they have wanted you to know all along. That final page begins differently from everything before it. If you are reading this, then I finally stopped being afraid of being understood. Your soulmate wrote those words directly to you, no longer speaking to themselves or hiding behind possibilities. They admitted that for a long time, they believed keeping their feelings private would somehow keep everything safe. But eventually they understood that silence has its own consequences. It can make someone feel forgotten when they were actually remembered constantly. It can make distance look like indifference. And it can turn something meaningful into a question neither person knows how to answer. Don't skip. Because your soulmate then admits the one thing they most wish they could change. It is not a particular conversation or one missed opportunity. They wish they had trusted you enough to tell you the truth sooner, instead of deciding for you what you might think, feel, or choose after hearing it. Then the letter becomes even more personal. Your soulmate writes that if you ever wondered whether you mattered, they wish you could have seen the moments nobody else saw. The times your name crossed their mind unexpectedly, the conversations they almost started, and the future possibilities they quietly imagined before talking themselves out of them. But they also make something clear: they do not expect those hidden feelings to erase the time that passed. They understand that you have your own story, your own emotions, and your own right to decide what happens next. Stay till the end, because this is where their confession becomes stronger than a simple declaration of love. They write, "I don't want you because I'm afraid of being alone. I want the chance to know you because something about knowing you made honesty feel more important than comfort." And beneath that sentence, your soulmate finally answers the question that has been hanging over every page: why you? Their answer is not about appearance, status, or some perfect quality. They write that you made them feel noticed in moments when they were not trying to impress anyone. You made ordinary conversations stay in their memory. And somehow, even after distance and uncertainty, the thought of being completely honest with you still feels more meaningful than beginning something easier somewhere else. Something huge is waiting for you, because the final lines are approaching, but your soulmate does something unexpected before reaching them. Instead of writing another confession, they ask you a question: if we had one opportunity to begin again with nothing hidden, would you want to know where it could lead? Then there is a blank space. Beneath it, one final sentence appears in smaller handwriting, almost like it was added at the last possible moment. Your soulmate says there is one truth they have intentionally saved until the very end of the letter, and it explains what they would choose if your answer to that question were yes. That truth saved for the end is the clearest thing your soulmate has written. If your answer were yes, they would choose to begin slowly, but they would choose you intentionally. No disappearing when emotions become difficult. No expecting you to decode silence. No pretending something meaningful is casual simply because admitting the truth feels vulnerable. Your soulmate writes that they would rather build trust one honest conversation at a time than make promises neither of you has had the chance to test in real life. And then comes an unexpected admission. They have imagined hearing you say yes before, but the version in their mind has changed. Once, they imagined excitement, immediate answers, everything suddenly becoming perfect. Now they imagine something quieter. Looking at you and realizing that, for the first time, neither of you needs to wonder what the other is hiding. Don't skip. Because that vision leads your soulmate to write one sentence that explains what they truly mean when they say they are choosing you. They are not choosing an imagined version of you. They want the person you actually are today, including everything they still have to learn. Your soulmate admits that time may have changed both of you, and strangely, that no longer scares them. It makes them curious. What matters to you now? What dreams have become important? What have you outgrown? What makes you feel understood? Stay till the end, because these questions reveal something important. Your soulmate is no longer trying to recover a frozen moment from the past. They want the opportunity to meet you again emotionally, without assuming they already know every answer. And then they write something they apparently struggle to admit. Maybe what I miss most is not who we were. Maybe I miss the possibility of discovering who we could become. That sentence finally connects the memories, the silence, the unfinished confession, and tomorrow's decision. But it also forces them to confront one last possibility, that your answer could still be no. Your soulmate writes that if you do not want the same beginning, they will respect that truth, because genuine honesty has to leave room for both people to choose. Yet even after acknowledging that possibility, they refuse to erase the letter. It has become proof of something important to them. They finally stopped running from their own feelings. Something huge is waiting for you, because just beneath those words, your soulmate makes the decision they had postponed throughout every page. Remember the two choices: give you the letter or tell you first. One of them is finally marked. They chose to speak first. And only if that conversation opens the door to something deeper will they place the letter in your hands. But before closing it, they added a final message across the back of the envelope. It is only one sentence, written directly to you, and unlike everything else, there is no hesitation anywhere in the handwriting. Those words reveal what your soulmate wants you to remember regardless of what happens tomorrow, and they may be the most meaningful words in the entire letter.